正義の味方しかここに参上。心の声が届いたのなら、その反響は必ず返ってくる。
報酬をもらった身だ。ただ力を尽くそう。 痛みよ我が身をまとえ。死ね。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。壊れる。
残響再現。悪くはない。ここへ来た甲斐があった。融合。
ターゲット確認。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。死ね。雷鳴よ牙を向け。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。切る。捕らえた。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。遅い。壊れろ。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。行動を慎め。冷静さを失うな。今だ。切る。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。いや。後戻りは許されない。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。死ね。壊れる。
行くぞ。これも音の力だ。
ターゲット確認。騎兵も戦争に不可欠だ。
雪を溶かせ。
地形も戦争に不可欠だ。その程度か。痛みよ、我が身をまとえ。締め殺す。切る。地形も戦争に不可欠だ。ターゲット確認。地形も戦争に不可欠だ。冷静さを失う。捕らえた。切る。後戻りは許されない。今だ。地形も戦争に不可欠だ。
電音残響再現。
この花をあげます。はい、笑って。
俺の手を借りたいとはな。
新発見があるといいですね。
みんなと一緒にいたい。これからも。
成長、呼吸すらもなんだか気持ちよくなりますね。大きくなあれ。進化をお見せします。やボトンシンセシス。
ターゲット確認。キル。奇形も戦争に不可欠だ。奇形も戦争に不可欠だ。しい壊れる。ゆう捕らえた。
花よ。やっ、チャンス。気をつけましょうね。
ターゲット確認。奇形も戦争に不可欠だ。知れ。
of killers eso fue satisfactorio.
Me llaman alegre. Tienen razón. Tengo claro mi destino.
Nick Crowley attacks QC.
YouTube is an unusual place. For the past 5 years, tracking down its most disturbed and mysterious content has become an obsession for me. That search has led me down rabbit holes and into pockets of the internet that, for better or worse, and usually for worse if I'm being honest, have left a permanent impact on me. But recently, I was asked if any one case stood out above the rest. What was the quote-unquote best of the worst? And I was surprised at how easily an answer came to me. It was a story that started in Fiji, in the back seat of a taxi cab. Inside, a woman grabs her seatbelt from the top left corner of her seat and pulls down, waiting to hear a click. But as she does so, her hand brushes against a familiar-feeling object. It was a cell phone, presumably left by the rider before her. For the student, times were tough, and she was just barely making ends meet, so she quietly made the decision to slide the phone into her pocket before the cab driver could notice. Shortly after, she was dropped off at home, where, with a mix of nervousness and excitement, she slid the device's lock screen. To her surprise, it was unlocked, and without hesitation she began to comb through its contents, leading her first to the phone's camera roll, where she found what looked to be a peaceful video of the ocean, eagerly pressing play to see what secrets the clip might hold. Over the course of the next 10 minutes and 26 seconds, she would witness perhaps the most gruesome video she had ever laid eyes on, the images burning into her mind frame by frame, never to be forgotten. The following day, she would upload the same video to YouTube, marking the start of an internet mystery whose trail was as vast as the ocean itself, and whose contents immediately made it one of the most mysterious videos to ever appear on YouTube. Before we dive deeper into this rabbit hole, I want to first thank today's sponsor. The video went live on August 17th, 2014 on an unknown channel called Common King Savu. It opens with a shot of the ocean, filmed with what appears to be the grainy camera of an old cell phone. We see ships floating and hear the voices of men yelling in various languages, later to be decoded as Mandarin, Vietnamese, and potentially even Taiwanese. And while translating their words is difficult, their sentiment is easy to understand. Something had grabbed the men's attention. Something in the water. The camera pans around as if it's looking for that something, while showing the vast, deep blue waters surrounding their ship.
Godzilla?
They were in the middle of nowhere, clearly miles and miles away from any sign of humanity. Suddenly, the commotion intensifies as the cameraman makes a dash for the opposite side of the ship, as finally he sees it. It was a man, warily treading water. The cameraman yells to him in English, "How are you?" To which the swimmer raises his hands, signifying his desperate need for help. It started to become clear that this video was going to be of some sort of rescue attempt. Somehow that man had ended up in the water and clearly needed to be saved, and this far out at sea, it seemed to be a miracle that these ships had reached him in time. But within this clip, nothing is what it seems, as rather than a life preserver being tossed to the man or maybe even a rope getting thrown his way, a gunshot rings out. A shot aimed directly at the man in the water. The shot misses just inches above his head, only to be followed by another shot and another, until finally the fourth try connects, the bullet piercing the man's head and turning the sea around him an unnatural shade of red. He was dead in an instant. Though the recording kept going, and so did the gunshots. The camera pans across the waves, now revealing two more men in the water, clinging to what appears to be the wreckage of their boat. A boat that somehow had been destroyed. And before long, one of them was struck too, leaving the other man hanging onto the debris as he silently watches his friend's body float lifelessly past him. He held on for nearly 4 minutes, not saying a word, not fighting back, just holding on, until finally, he too was executed. Understandably, the ordeal proved too much for the cameraman to handle, as at this point he just couldn't control an outburst. But not in any...
Oh, well, let me guess. This boat is like a boat holding cargo, and they're being defended by like the Coast Guard or whatever, but there was like a military ship, and these were the pirates or whatever.
Sort of emotional way that one might expect, as instead... he couldn't hold back his laughter. Even as a fourth swimmer was found and also executed, the laughs and the cheers from the people on board just kept on coming.
Hello! Hi!
There was no sign of remorse for the killings, only celebration. And at the end of the video, the crew even posed for photos. Some of them joining arms together while others took selfies, with those listless bodies floating in the background. Over the course of the clip, 63 shots had been fired at 4 men in the ocean, none of whom survived the encounter. The video would be kept on YouTube for only 3 days under the title "Fishing Vessel Fijian Crew Getting Shot Outside Fiji Waters," providing the first and really the only bit of context for the clip, as when people began to dig deeper to find out what exactly they had just watched, they found something unusual. They found... nothing. There was no other information about the event. There was no news articles. There were no police reports. There was quite literally nothing. This video was seemingly the first ever mention of this incident on the internet. Now, this might make sense if it had happened in the days surrounding the upload, but when digging into the video's metadata, it was revealed that not only was this not true, but that the video had actually been filmed a whole 2 years prior, in 2012. Meaning that for 2 full years, whatever this event was, went unseen and unreported.
Maybe some
Given its alleged Fijian ties, their government would be the first to investigate in a process that only took about a day, as they immediately determined that the fishermen seen in this footage were not actually Fijian, and nor were the shooters. In fact, the waters didn't even match theirs either. And so, with the video having no ties to their country, they immediately dropped the case. for any others trying to find more information, things were bleak, as they had no idea where the incident took place, who the victims were, who the shooters were, the identity of the ships, or even the motivation behind the killings. They tried to find out who these victims were by searching every single accessible missing persons database from all across the world. They then tried to find cases of missing ships or reports of shootings at sea, only to reach the same results. Despite seeing it with our own eyes, it was as if these killings never even happened. With intrigue building around the clip, a few larger news agencies would pick up the story, most of them admitting that they too couldn't find any noteworthy information on anything involving the case. And with the facts nearly impossible to—
I don't think it's fair. I think it's just a case of like maybe like uncharted waters, like in international waters, like and like undocumented or poor document keeping countries or places, and it's just like
come by, they instead focused on the more human questions surrounding the ordeal. Why? What had motivated the men on this ship to open fire on these helpless people? And given the media climate at the time, a reason was quickly brought forward.
These are the pirates of Somalia, holding the world's shipping industry to ransom.
U.S. officials say they are working with other countries to deal with the lawlessness they say is the root cause of the piracy.
We have to ensure that those who commit acts of piracy are held accountable.
The high seas are often a lawless place, and of all the criminal groups that can be found at sea, by far the most notorious at this time were Somali pirates, with it quickly being assumed that the men seen in the water were just that. Pirates that had planned to overthrow the ship, yet were somehow stopped, leading to their slow-motion execution. This honestly explains a lot, like why the crime was never reported and why the crew seemed to be celebrating their killing, as after all, this would mean that they had just survived a pirate attack from a group that likely would have done much worse to them. Because of these reports, the discourse surrounding the footage quickly went from shock to, in many instances, support, with one user writing, "Kill those fucking pirates. They would not hesitate to kill you if they had the chance. How does it feel, you fucking scums?" And while not everyone held such strong emotions, for most it was settled. This was a case of self-defense, albeit a heartless one. Though as the clip began to slip from the headlines, questions began to arise that for a select few weren't so easy to ignore. For starters, in the footage we see 4 large boats in the area, which would make one wonder why such a small pirate group would choose to attack a ship that had reinforcements literally right next to it.
It's how it's been in
It almost
Somalia,
seemed
though.
like a suicide mission. And on top of this, through the debris you can clearly see that the boat was wooden, with it later being identified as a dhow, a slow-moving fishing vessel almost exclusively used in Arab countries. Given its speed and fragile wooden structure, this would likely be the last choice for many pirates. So not only did this not make sense from an attack standpoint, but the country of origin of this boat seemingly didn't match either. And to make this even stranger, the boat clearly had a flag attached to it, and though it couldn't be definitively identified, flying the flag of a country is almost unheard of for Somali pirates. It's safe to say that the pirate theory wasn't as concrete as many had assumed, and this only becomes—
Hold on. Pirate is one word, but there's also different type of piracy. In Somalia, there's not only hijackings and whatever. People go there and fish illegally as well. I think that's also piracy or whatever. I don't know whatever it's called, but I think in that zone, people do go to fish when they shouldn't be. No, isn't that how that? Because I'm telling you, when it doesn't we watch a documentary about it. Okay, never mind. Poaching, never mind.
Is more evident the further we dig into the video, with one of the most glaring discrepancies being the demeanor of the crew. It's obvious that they weren't fearing for their lives at all during this attack. In fact, their words show just how much they were enjoying it, with some people even shouting for the camera to get a better angle and encouraging the gunmen to keep shooting. And perhaps even more importantly, at no point do we see any weapons or any form of retaliation from the men floating in the water. It didn't look or sound like a fight. It appears more as a straight-up attack. And most chillingly of all, one of the swimmers can faintly be heard yelling, "No Somali, no pirate."
Really? Jesus.
Despite these glaring gaps, years would pass following the video's upload, with little in the way of new reported information. However, there were a select few who made it their mission to uncover the truth behind the footage, one sliver at a time. Most notably, a private investigator named Karsten von Hoslin picked up the case and documented his journey on a show called Lawless Oceans. He started his investigation by pinpointing the ships seen in the footage, identifying them as the Chunyi 217, the Chunyi 628, the Lao Yuan Yu 99, and finally, the Pingshin 101, the boat that pulled the trigger. These ships were all tuna longliners operating out of Taiwan, where fishing is one of their economy's biggest industries. But what makes Taiwanese fishing so unique is that their ships operate almost exclusively in international waters, where unlawful activity runs rampant. This includes illegal fishing, long work hours for employees, abuse, and in some cases, even murder. As on the high seas, far away from the watchful eyes of the law, you can get away with almost anything, which explains why this crime had gone undetected for so long. And with the Pingshin 101 being the unquestioned killer, that's where the investigation would quickly be focused.
I'm not saying it's a correct thing.
The history of this boat reveals a few interesting notes.
That's what happened.
For starters, it was issued an international yellow card for aggressive behavior years before, though nothing is really known about the incident that led to this decision. But what we do know is that in 2010, the ship had made an insurance claim, citing that it collided with a smaller vessel, causing some minor damages. And though the captain claimed that this was an accident, the footage said otherwise. Somehow, this exact same incident just so happened to be captured by a man sailing aboard the Pingshin 101. The footage shows the longliner aggressively pursuing a smaller fishing boat, while the crew aboard laughs and cheers on, just as they did in the other video.
Yeah!
Only this time, they aren't the only aggressors, as we can see 3 other ships joining in as well. The exact same 3 ships shown in that original video.
Insane, dude.
Eventually, the Pingshin rams the vessel, causing it to break down before the video ends abruptly. It's unknown what happened to the ship from here, however, many have posited that its crew was met with the same fate as the other victims of the Pingshin 101. Much like the Sea Slaughter video, it's unknown why the ship was even attacked to begin with. This clearly wasn't a Somali boat, and again, at no point did we see any sort of weapon or any sort of combativeness coming from that ship. It seemed to be simply another fishing vessel. But what else is so intriguing about this video is that the fleet of ships were equally as involved, actively working to corral and trap the boat. And given their proximity to the murdered swimmers in the first video, perhaps they were all involved in that slaying too, almost as if these ships were part of a gang, with the Pingshin 101 as its leader. With all these discoveries, finding this ship was going to be the key to the investigation, as having documented its aggressive history, finding it became everything for investigators. But whereas the search for information had thus far been difficult, the search for the Pingshin 101 was impossible. In July of 2014, a cargo ship sailing in the Indian Ocean named the Sam Tiger received an SOS call from a nearby ship. When they arrived on the scene, they saw the Pingshin 101 on fire and sinking alone in the ocean. Upon the crew's rescue, it was stated that there had been some sort of explosion on board and that the engine room had been completely flooded, causing the ship to go down, leaving it burned to a crisp at the bottom of the ocean, just months before the video would be exposed to the public.
The attackers got clapped?
The ship and all of the evidence that it might hold were gone, and gone under suspicious circumstances as well. Allegedly, when asked about what happened that night, fishermen on board gave varying testimonies that didn't seem to line up, with no one being able to offer any sort of cause for the explosion, and some stating that they didn't even hear an explosion as well. With the story of the flooded engine room seeming off too, considering that it had a watertight door that could have easily been closed, thus stopping the sinking. Today, multiple ships...
I'm guessing that they did that often. I'm gonna take a wild guess. Allegedly, they did that often, and then they filmed it, probably didn't want to post it, whatever, and then the recording got leaked, and then things escalated, and then they actually took care of it, whatever, and then they were getting heat for it, and then they removed evidence.
Experts who have reviewed the case believe that the ship was sunk intentionally, but whether this was for insurance purposes or to conceal some sort of evidence is unknown, but the timing of it all might hint at the latter. As crushing as this was for the investigation, there still was hope, as even though the ship was no longer around, the crew certainly was. Their identities were found after a few had posted images of themselves onto Facebook aboard the Pingshin 101, and after reaching out to many of these crew members, the investigator Karsten van Hoslin found a few who were actually willing to speak with him, and so, individually, they would be asked about the murders at sea, and one by one, they began to recount their experiences. Only, as they began to talk, there was something strange about their story, something that didn't match the video at all. It was the time of day, with each of the men noting that the killings had taken place at nighttime, and that it was completely dark out when the shootings occurred. This made no sense to the investigator until he realized something. The story that they were sharing was not the one portrayed in this video,
that's what I thought.
And instead, it was an entirely different killing, and one that was far, far more gruesome.
That's what I thought. This probably happened a lot of times. They probably did that like a bunch, and so the one time that they got flack for it.
It happened that very same year, in 2012, not even a week before the events seen in the video. With this incident, no cameras were rolling. Instead, the story only lives through the accounts of the deckhands who watched it all transpire. In was the dead of night, as the Pingshin 101 floated across the waters of the Indian Ocean, accompanied by 3 other ships in its group.
Holy.
As the sailors finally settled in for a precious few hours of sleep, the quiet of the night was shattered by the captain yelling across the intercom. There was a ship approaching on the horizon, and according to the captain, that ship was carrying pirates. The men knew what this meant as they scrambled to get dressed and headed to the deck, where the group of 4 boats had already begun their offensive measures. Yet, as they watched on, they saw that the ship was silent. It wasn't provoking in any way, and rather was minding its own business, appearing to be on none other than a standard fishing expedition. On its dimly lit deck, a group of men could be seen standing watch, and none of them were armed. Then, noticing that they were in danger, the ship attempted to turn and flee, but it was too late. They had already been labeled a threat by merely being on this fleet's island. Quickly, the Pingshin 101 caught up with the vessel and struck its side, causing the boat to split in half and throwing its occupants into the dark waters.
Jesus.
The light on board flickered, then shut off, covering the wreckage in a blanket of black, leaving nothing but the sound of splashing, yelling, and the faint putter.
Yeah, I wasn't joking about the PvP. It wasn't like a light joke. It's kind of that's why I can explain it then.
Until the water turns bright, as a powerful spotlight on board the Pingshin beams into the sea, illuminating one swimmer struggling in the water. The captain calls over his armed security guard and gives the order to open fire. The guard looks back nervously, explaining that he would need to contact his officers at home and get approval to shoot this man, given that the swimmer was not fighting back and had not acted aggressively in the first place. However, to the captain, this didn't matter, and he insisted that the guard opened fire anyway. And so, with shaky hands, he raised his weapon and pointed it towards the helpless man, only to pause when he heard a faint cry. It was the supposed pirate in his sights, speaking a language that the Arab security guard knew, and just like the incident that started it all, the swimmer yells, "No, Somali." In that moment, the realization set in that they had just attacked an innocent fishing vessel, causing the guard to immediately lower his weapon, only for it to be ripped from his hands by the captain. His mind was already made up, and so he took aim and fired the gun himself.
Wait, the captain?
Opening up the door.
Oh,
to
GG.
carnage. That night, the Ping Shin 101 and its surrounding boats would use their spotlights to scan the water for the rest of the ship's occupants, and every time they found one, they would be shot on sight. Scan, shoot, scan, shoot. Over and over again. This went on all night. And by the morning, the crew had witnessed the drawn-out execution of approximately 22 men.
What the fuck?
The stories from these crew members added a whole new layer to this case.
Yeah, but why are they celebrating then?
These ships were targeting innocent fishing boats and slaughtering people at sea for essentially no reason at all.
Oh, maybe the crewmen were in agreement with the captain, but the guardmen weren't, especially since it was against the rules or whatever.
And somehow, all of this information had never once reached the public and only came to light as a result of a single YouTube video. And the discoveries didn't stop there. As investigators were combing through the net for details on the Ping Shin, they found...
nothing.
Another video.
What the fuck?
A video depicting the very same slaughter as that original incident. Only this recording was taken from one of the nearby ships.
Film on the fucking latest potato, brother. Like,
the clip
what
shows
the
exactly
fuck?
what was missing from that initial footage. The build-up to the men ending up in the water, as we can see the Dhow still intact and being chased down by the fleet. No weapons are ever used by the victims even as their ship begins to break down, which in turn forces them to jump into the water, where the executions begin. But that's not the only thing this footage shows, as this angle gives us a better idea of the scope of these murders. It wasn't just 4 men that went into the water. No, in the footage you can see many, many more, their heads bobbing up and down as they await the end of their lives. And though it's hard to tell for sure, it appears that the number of victims was at least triple what we initially believed, with 12 people ending up in the water. A number corroborated by the crew themselves during questioning, who stated that all the shootings were done by either their captain, the armed guards, or even the other ships. In only a week's time, this fleet had killed upwards of 35 innocent people with their merciless attacks, and given the ship's history of violence and its seemingly crazed captain, there's no telling how many others they had taken too. With so many players involved in this situation, it's hard to pin the blame on any one person for these killings. Everybody aboard all had a hand in it, but it makes the most sense to start at the top, with the leader of the fleet and the captain of the Ping Shin 101. And given the accounts of the crew members, his identity would finally be revealed. His name is Captain Wang Feng Yu, or as he was more commonly called on the high seas, Captain Hoodlum. According to his crew, this captain was an angry man, crazy even, who made his points by hitting and beating, choosing violence above anything else, which was perhaps done to make up for his inexperience as a captain, given that he was only 35 years old, which was considered very young for that role. The revelation of his identity led to him being tracked down and questioned for his crimes, to which he gave a reason for each and every attack, proclaiming that these ships were pirates and that they were threatening him, even stating that one of the men had tried to board their ship on the day of that infamous slaughter. But upon further questioning, his defense fell apart. His actions were impossible to defend, and whether he even knew it or not, he was responsible for the deaths of countless innocent men, including many by his own hand. As a result, Wang Fengyu was put on trial for his crimes committed in international waters, which is considered extremely rare for cases like this.
Just ram the ship, break it in half, and they're trying to board my ship, brother.
With the Taiwanese government charging him for the 4 murders shown in the video, as these were the only ones that they could verify, due to the other story having literally no record of having even happened. He was sentenced to 26 years in prison, which after an appeal would be reduced to just 13.
What?
Of all the other ships and men involved, no others would be charged along with him, making this the only form of justice to come from the deaths of all these men, supposedly mistaken for pirates. But as the case now winds down to a close, and we near the end of this rabbit hole, we're still left to wonder about those victims. If not pirates, then who were they? Well, this was actually something explored on the Lawless Ocean show, with the investigation taking them all the way to a little-known port in Iran called Kanarak. There, Van Hosen managed to track down records of 2 ships that had been lost to sea in 2012, that had just so happened to match the description of the ones that the Pink Shin and their group had attacked. But despite their disappearances, they were never mentioned to law enforcement, and they were never mentioned across any sort of media outlets, even the local ones. Which actually makes sense, as when you start to dig into the background of these boats, it becomes clear that they weren't just fishing, and rather they were more than likely carrying drugs. As it turns out, it was commonplace for vessels like this in that area to carry with them supplies of heroin that they would then transport across the ocean. And what makes this so crazy—
Yeah, but even then, these aren't the police. They can't police the waters like that.
—is that when you watch the first video back, you can see little packages floating in the water that appear almost exactly like large bags of heroin.
You're not a vigilante.
As a result, these ships were likely trying to be extra covert and not draw any sort of attention, as getting in an altercation could easily end up with their dark secret being exposed, meaning that there was likely no way that they were threatening the Pink Shin or any of the vessels seen in this group. It just wouldn't make any sense. However, within this context, it's hard to describe these people as being completely innocent, but did this really warrant such a brutal execution? And it's important to note too that the murderous fleet almost certainly didn't expect them to be drug carriers. And given that the Pink Shin and its fleet had no ties to the drug world, it's apparent that these drugs had nothing to do with the killings. It was just a strange coincidence, leaving us still without a true motive. Following this lead, Van Hosen visited a nearby village where many of the fallen crew members' families were living, and there they discovered innumerable people missing their fathers, husbands, children, all of whom had gone to sea never to return, while in truth, these families had no idea just how savagely their loved ones had been killed. Though this discovery makes the case a bit more morally murky, it at least provides an answer to one of the most glaring questions of who these victims were. As though they were never named specifically, it's clear now at least where they came from.
I mean, the only 2 boats, both being coincidences that they're both drug.
The rabbit hole this video carries with it is almost unimaginable. Imagine if we had just accepted the theory that this was an isolated pirate attack. We would never have known the true story behind this fleet.
Out of all ships that they saw, the 2 they saw and the 2 that they shot at were both coincidentally drug related. We're missing something here.
The true number of their victims. And justice would have never been served, even if said justice wasn't as satisfying as many had hoped. But of all the twists and turns of this case, there was somehow one more that remained. As oddly enough, the entire story of this video making its way onto YouTube didn't exactly happen as it was first described.
I fucking knew it.
We started this case with the story of the video's uploader discovering the clip on a cell phone found in a taxicab in Fiji, but she would actually later go on to retract this claim once investigators questioned her further. Instead, she had stated that she had been sent the footage by someone else and felt compelled to share it with the world, to warn others of what was really happening out there on the high seas. She even claimed that she knew it would be potentially dangerous posting this video, not only for her, but for the anonymous person she sent it to. And so, she made up this story to essentially absolve them from any involvement. This means that the clip wasn't found on the cell phone of whoever had recorded it, and instead, it had been circulating. What makes this even more fascinating is that this allowed investigators to track down where the video actually came from, or at least how it had gotten to the island of Fiji, and how it had gotten to this phone in particular. And when doing so, all roads led them to a man who had been an avid collector, and possibly distributor, of so-called snuff films.
Brother?
And within his devices, these investigators found hundreds of other disturbing videos of brutal killings, making it almost certain that this video was originally sold as a snuff film, and even bringing up the question of whether or not these killings had been done for that sole purpose. This actually lines up quite well with how the men were acting in the video, gloating for the camera and directing the cameraman on where to go, yelling at him to film it all. And given that we don't really have a solid motive for this event, perhaps it was done for this video specifically, as after all, these workers at sea are notoriously underpaid, and so a video like this would be worth much more than anyone on board was used to making. This is, however, impossible to prove, and though it may have played a role in what was happening that day, it seems more conclusive to say that this was a case of a crazed captain who likely just had a crippling fear of pirates, with this paranoia leading to him being overprotective of his ship and the fleet around him. With this behavior leading to the incidents that, had it not been for a single YouTube video, would have basically never happened, existing instead only as Fisherman's Tale. And I have to wonder if this could be the case for even more incidents out there at sea, not only for the Pingshin 101 and its fleet, but across the entire high seas. How many more killings have gone unnoticed? Killings that we'll likely never know about, until the next gruesome video finds its way to our screens. I want to give a massive thank you to a few people. Firstly, Nextbro for jumping on this video. You guys definitely already know this, but he has an amazing channel. If you don't, definitely go check it out. And him and I actually have a ghost hunting channel that we do on the side where we go
Holy Chad.
on all sorts of crazy adventures. So if you guys want to check it out, definitely give it a watch. And also, I want to send a shout out to those who did incredible work researching this case, especially Karsten von Hoslen, whose show I highly recommend and will link below, as well as the Outlaw Ocean Project, TM Tracking, and Sarah Torrey, who did an amazing write-up with lots and lots more information, which I've also linked below.
Okay, here it comes. Yo, this is X.
There is a variety of killers in the Entity's realm, and as a result a big difference in their power levels. This means the Entity has to balance them out by changing them. Some are weakened by the Entity, and others are empowered. They all need to be at a relatively similar power level in order to make the trials fair. We'll take a look at all of them and assess how or if they were either nerfed or buffed by the Entity, and for what possible reason. Hey everyone, and let's get into it. Starting out with the substantially nerfed, the characters who were greatly weakened by the Entity in order to fit the trials. Vecna is maybe the most nerfed down out of any of the characters. Outside of the realm, he is a powerful wizard and lich, but has been stripped of a number of his abilities and left with just his 4 different spells in the realm. This isn't terrible, but he's definitely much weaker. We're even shown this visibly with a mark on his back, which indicates a restriction put on him by the Entity. This is something we've never seen before, or something that has never been needed for other characters, showing that Vecna is probably an actual threat when he says he wants to overtake and destroy the Entity. It's a case where the Entity is making a very visible action to greatly nerf him, something I doubt he likes either. Freddy is another character who has gone through substantial nerfs. At the end of his lore it even mentions this, saying his powers are buffed in some ways but nerfed in others. The thing is, I'm not sure what was buffed. He mostly just seems nerfed to me. He's got far less control over the dream world, he's no longer essentially a god in it, but instead just a general slasher who can confuse the survivors a bit. It's really quite a substantial nerf. He's further damageable out of the dream world too, and is still vulnerable in the dream world to these things. To things like pallets. He's lost most of his autonomy over the dream world, with the Entity nerfing it down and limiting it substantially. Sadako is another character who's gone from being able to instantly kill someone or curse them across 7 days and guarantee death to a sort of underpowered version of herself, restricted to in-trial TVs and a much weaker application of her curse with the 7-bar system. She doesn't really have much telekinetic ability anymore either, able to only use use it for utility things like carrying. She's generally quite slow and incapable of causing much damage without first teleporting lots. Sadako seems quite substantially nerfed down from her pre-realm self. Dredge is definitely much weaker. When described in the lore, Dredge is like this overwhelming darkness that consumes all, and covers everything when it's there. This happens sort of sometimes in the realm, kind of, with Nightfall, but it's much less deadly and scary than in the lore. Dredge as a whole in fact is now much smaller, and restricted to this tighter fog and form in order to fit the trials. Instead of being able to manifest anywhere, it can only go to lockers and stuff like that. Evil embodied, but restricted greatly to the trials and their rules. Moving on to greatly nerfed. Characters who are absolutely weaker but are not completely weakened. Nemesis doesn't quite have the supernatural and otherworldly powers of the substantially nerfed characters, but he is still greatly nerfed. The primary change is his lack of mutation. In the realm, his mutation extends to only his arm and tentacle, which can level up and slightly mutate up in tiers of 1 to 3. Compare this to how he mutates in Resident Evil 3 and it's quite a substantial difference. In DBD he barely even alters his physical form for the scenario. He's further nerfed by no longer having access to weaponry, such as his flamethrower or rocket launcher, and even his tentacle itself is much shorter and unable to grab, and only swing or slap down. This is a heavily nerfed Nemesis. Wesker is similar to Nemesis in that his mutation and general BOW abilities have been greatly nerfed down in the realm, leaving him just sort of a shadow of his former self. He can still do dashes, but he can't consistently move at a much faster speed like he could before. He can't mutate beyond his base Ouroboros tendril, and he's generally just a lot weaker. Cenobite may seem like the type to be substantially nerfed, however I think he retains enough power and enough freedom that he is only in greatly. He's still able to teleport to the box, use chains, and even teleport people out of the realm, which is quite a strong and a clear sign of trust from the entity. Sure, many of these abilities are greatly nerfed down to fit the trials, but not so nerfed I think that I would put him at the very bottom. Pyramid Head, despite receiving quite substantial nerfs to his power from the entity, did still get a lot in return for this. It might be because he made a deal with the entity, where others didn't. Whilst his overall power level as a being has been reduced it seems, to fit the trials, he is still buffed in a number of ways too. He has a number of new abilities that he couldn't do before, like his trails, cages, and ranged attack, so it's a weird one for him. However, I think due to his overall power level within the trials likely being quite heavily limited, then he is still down here despite his buffs. This may have been an agreed nerf though, part of the agreement Pyramid Head and the entity made together. Demogorgon has largely just been restricted quite heavily, with it no longer able to move in the way it usually would, and further greatly reduced in its defensive capability, and even making it vulnerable to flashlights. Demo in-game is far from the power of the demos in the show. It's still strong with some of its speed intact, with some attacks, but not much. Additionally, it has been cut from the Upside Down, with the Upside Down in the realm simply being a blank darkness that it traverses through. Xenomorph is sort of a similar deal, it's just a greatly nerfed version of the actual Xenomorphs. In the realm they are slower, clunkier, and lack the ability to attack in more strategic ways. They also seem generally weaker and more susceptible to damage. They are still clearly strong and retain abilities, but they have also quite clearly lost a lot too. Blight I actually want to put in greatly nerfed, due to the fact that the serum seems to have much less of an effect on him, and provide less of a boost than it feels it should, with Blight required to use it frequently and after each rush. We even see what Blight should really look like in the true Blight skin. This does make me think that Blight has been nerfed, or his mutating abilities and the serum's power has been stunted for the purpose of keeping him in a fair spot for the trials, forcing him to use this less powerful serum seemingly and stopping him from growing too powerful. That's mostly just speculation though. Equally, Blight's serum could just be his perfected one, so maybe he's just meant to function this way. It just seems a bit wasteful I suppose. In which case he'd be more in the unchanged or slightly buffed area I think. Now on to slightly nerfed. Myers was definitely nerfed slightly from his pre-realm self, although despite his embodiment of evil, he never had access to substantial power anyway. He was just a guy with a knife. He did do some strange stuff though, such as basically like teleporting, it seemed. Even though Myers was nerfed, he did still keep a lot that made him powerful, with it instead being reworked into add-ons and things like that. So just a slight nerf for him, I think. A general resistance nerf mostly. Huntress has definitely received a slight nerf to her agility and general speed, I think. In the realm she is much slower and takes her time, where in cutscenes and stuff we see her move incredibly quickly and brutally. She's still incredibly precise and able to launch a hatchet across a whole map, but she's definitely received some notable nerfs to make her fairer for the trials, mainly in the way of speed, I think. Skull Merchant I would debate is in the slightly nerfed category. Beyond the baseline buffs to strength with kicking and stuff like that, Merchant is weaker, I would say. In the realm, her drones in particular are greatly reduced in mobility, having to stay still and much lower to the ground, where before they were high enough that a kite became entangled with them. Merchant outside of the realm I think has much better tracking ability and access to technology, which has been simplified down for the trials. So a technology nerf in this case, I think. Singularity I tend to think has been nerfed somewhat, with him now being restricted to his current form, seemingly unable to improve himself like before and adapt and grow stronger. The entity wants to keep him in this broken form to remind him of the past more than likely. This is a pretty big restriction, I think, making Hux overall clunkier and slower than he could be, less efficient and so overall nerfed. Unknown is a mysterious character, and so we never really have a definitive idea of the power it's capable of. With this said, I do think it was nerfed slightly in the realm, mostly in the sense of its movement and capability to deceive in the trials being altered and made into something far more simplistic. This isn't that substantial as a nerf to its power, with it still functioning in quite a similar way. Next up we have kept mostly the same. These are characters who I think are pretty similar to their pre-realm selves, only with very small adjustments maybe to certain aspects of them. Trapper seems to have been kept mostly the same within the realm, with the entity not notably buffing or nerfing him. He's still sort of just a guy with bear traps. He likely got some small baseline buffs and some small nerfs like most characters do, but aside this he doesn't get much change at all. This could be because of his rebellious nature. The entity doesn't want to buff him too much, but equally doesn't want to nerf him, as this is all likely a source of emotion too, leaving him somewhere in the middle. There were lots of votes for overall buffed when I asked you over on Discord, so maybe due to his additional pain resistance and things like that, he could be considered a bit higher here. I don't know, what do you think? Bubba is pretty much identical to how he appears in Texas Chainsaw. His only changes really lie with the baseline buffs he receives to things like pallet breaking and stuff like that. Otherwise Bubba is about the same level of power before and when inside of the realm. Pig is another character with very little difference. The main benefit she gets is a more literal stealth factor, with her becoming undetectable when crouching and things like her traps being more abundant in the realm and trials. It could be debated she had slight nerfs with the game being less elaborate, but that's equally debatable. Her goal in the realm when entering it aligns with how she's presented in the trials, so I don't think she had to make much of a sacrifice really for their alteration. Clown is also just basically the same. In fact, the entity probably buffed Maurice more than him. The only big thing I suppose is his ability to just materialize bottles out of nowhere, otherwise Clown is essentially the same as before. Deathslinger is quite similar in the realm to how he's presented in his lore. He's maybe a bit slower than before, but this could equally just be because he's older. I do tend to think he's been barely altered by the entity. His slowness could also just be a decision on his part to draw things out and seem more menacing. The entity could have repaired his leg after all, because it can do that, it can replace things and repair different parts of characters, but it made a decision not to, so I think it's intentional. Now onto the buffed characters, the characters who have been empowered. Legion have been buffed in the sense of their blades and damage now inflicting a more powerful effect and wound when they use it. In Frenzy, they become empowered by their newfound freedom and are able to inflict particularly deadly wounds, as well as sprint and vault. Comparatively to before the realm though, this isn't too different from what they could do, and certain add-ons even make reference to this. So overall I would say they were kept about the same. Things like critical damage and stuff like that are things they studied and would know about prior. Deep wounds may just be a manifestation of that. They did of course receive baseline buffs, which are more effective on them than other characters. I will put them in slight here however due to their insta-down ability and the effect of increased speed as they chain hits together, which is definitely something they couldn't do before. This increasing speed and the ability to finally insta-down when at that max speed. Billy's primary buff was to his speed. Prior to the realm he actually injured his leg, which is why he has a limp. However, in the realm the entity seems to have not only repaired this to some degree, but has further imbued him with a superhuman speed when he uses his chainsaw, allowing him to sprint at high speeds and not be slowed by his damaged leg. Ghostface has received some buffs in the way of being able to insta-down. It seems the entity has taken his meticulousness and ability to study a target and boiled it down into a process where he can do this all in just a few seconds, allowing the insta-down. It doesn't change too much, but does adjust him for the trials and empowers him a bit. I suppose he's also slightly empowered because he has his floaty costume bits. Does that count as a buff? I think that counts as a buff. It's like a style buff, you know. Twins I would consider have been given a slight notable buff from the entity, with Victor now being able to die and come back repeatedly. It does sound powerful as an ability, but in the trials it's not especially. This is all that was really changed with them, making them slightly more effective together and able to set up more complex attacks. Trickster definitely got a slight buff in the form of his main event, where he's able to flurry a bunch of knives out after hitting some, and do so at a much faster speed that is probably impossible for someone to realistically do without an entity buff. Otherwise, Trickster does remain relatively the same, just with this slight speed buff I think. Chucky I do believe is slightly buffed. He's a bit quicker, has his faster dash attack, which seems generally speedier than he can move in the films, and he's just overall more agile I think. He also of course has the baseline buff of being able to break the large pallets. This one's debatable, but I do think the entity has buffed him somewhat. He of course also got the Ghost of Charles to assist him, which is a definite buff and helps him in his smaller form, just having that extra assistance basically. Onto the greatly buffed characters. These are characters with quite notable changes to their power level now that they're in the realm. Artis was just a normal human before she came to the realm, yet in the realm she's been bestowed with substantial power and ability from the entity. Her hands have been returned to her and are even able to form into solid weapons. She's further able to summon her dire crows and has the potential to cause damage with them. This crow guidance and affinity of her prior life being morphed into a power for her. She's a lot more powerful than she used to be, that's for sure. Knight weirdly I think has been buffed despite him not really needing it. In In the realm, he's still this huge, strong, hulking knight, but now he can further spawn in his guards as these ghost-like assistants he can give orders. That's a pretty good buff to his power level. He maybe doesn't have quite the same movement or ability with his weapons available, but this equally may just be a conscious choice on his part. To me at least, the additional ability of spawning in these roaming guards does put him far more into buff than nerf. Doctor is another character who has received quite a huge buff from the entity, despite appearing and acting relatively the same prior to the realm. The big buff he got is the inexhaustible spark within him that powers his ability and allows him to infinitely shoot out electricity. Quite a big buff, I think. Oni is another quite debatable one, however I think he is deserving of greatly buffed. Sure, he was already an incredibly skilled and deadly samurai, but in the realm he now has supernatural ability and is able to even channel his rage into a tangible power. He's been morphed into an actual Oni, or at least the entity's interpretation of one. He has blue skin, clawed hands, and feet, and is able to let out this otherworldly rage and power once he's collected enough blood. His desire to destroy bloodlines weaker than his becoming an actual and physical force. Finally, the substantially buffed characters who were empowered significantly by the entity. Hag does seem to have received a buff for sure. She technically receives her buff just prior to the trials also, with her empowerment happening when she makes her deal with the entity. This deal seems to transform her into what we see now, with her large claw and greater strength and wielding of the hexes. Before, she was sort of unable to use the hexes effectively or in her favor, but now they seem to have precise effects and whatnot, displaying their power and potential when used properly. Not only was Lisa physically buffed and also repaired likely, but she was further given some harmony with the hexes and the ability to wield them. Quite a huge buff. Wraith was given quite a substantial buff in the realm. His bell in particular was changed and empowered by the entity, with it now able to be wrung and completely cloak Philip. This is a pretty powerful effect. Philip also seems generally stronger and faster, able to move with great speed when he is cloaked. His add-ons further open up the possibility of the many alterations and additional effects that can be applied to the bell. Nurse has been buffed greatly, but it's not come without cost. She's been given the realm's strongest power, with her ability to blink through walls and objects, allowing her to briefly enter the spirit world, phasing in and out of the trials. She does this by potentially channeling the life force of Spencer, Protus Pren's warden, who she killed. The only downside to her powers is the intense pain she feels, but this doesn't take away necessarily from the great power it has given her. She's further able to use general telekinesis, with her floating and able to move survivors without touching them in her Mori. Spirit was empowered a lot. She was completely reconstructed for one, and then further given the ability to phase and do things like summon a blade from the shard in her hand. The entity takes Rin from a normal person, and a dying one at that, and turned her into a powerful spirit, this coming at the cost of her new blue skin and her limbs now attached instead by an otherworldly magic. Plague is another character who has been buffed a ton. Before the realm she was dying in a cave from the plague, but now inside of it she's able to wield this plague, and it instead empowers her. She can shoot it out and infect others, and the plague itself even seems faster acting, and she even has a new form of it able to instantly cause damage. This is a huge buff, and likely given as a reward for her loyalty. She's also of course no longer dying from it, she can resist the plague herself. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to let me know your own thoughts down below. Someone mentioned I stopped saying thanks and goodbye, so thanks and goodbye.
Orders? Oh, ha ha!
¿La sangre de quién vamos a derramar el día de hoy? Digo, tomar. No, compartir. Ay, ¿qué más se hace con la sangre?
30 segundos para los súbditos.
Ja, no había visto que las lenguas solo están ahí detrás de los dientes. No hace falta pelear. Podría solo compartir su sangre.
Es demasiado.
Los espíritus llaman. Se supone que me tenía que reír. No es el rugido de mis tripas. ¡Wow! Moriré. Hora de entrar a las cosas. Uy, moverme en 4 patas será mucho más fácil. ¡Tú proteges! ¡Yo ataco! Cuando la gente habla de su lengua materna, ¿por qué el lenguaje corporal no es una opción? La última vez que lamí un bronco estornudé por días.
Ha muerto un
What the fuck?
El misterio de hoy. El saludo de mano. ¿Por qué? ¿Es una prueba de fuerza? ¿O tal vez así restriegan su aroma?
Oh no! This is kill the fucking worth it.
¡Estás tan bonito! ¡Tengo que comerte!
So what?
¡Siempre huyen! Una Soy ágil cuando tengo hambre.
I do have him arms, so he doesn't fucking...
Soy un arma, pero ahora soy yo me empuño. ¡Sangra! Pelearé contra ti y tus pequeños.
He fucking stole me red, or I think he stole me red. You fucking retard, holy shit. Fucking piece of shit.
Yo no pierdo el control. Me libero a mí misma del control. Se me aburre la mandíbula.
I think I can hit him. I think I can... 50%.
no puedo comer por la nariz. ¡Escúrrete directo hacia mi boca!
Ha muerto un enemigo.
Y sigo con hambre.
Es una masacre.
¡Ay! ¿Ya se me está yendo el color? Y apenas se me acabó la sangre. La gente sobrepiensa demasiado las peleas. Solo pon al soldado más fuerte contra el enemigo más grande. A mí casi me funciona. ¿Tienes miedo? ¿Con la pancita? ¡Wow! ¡Tu boca es enorme! ¡Hay que hacerlo! ¿Dónde te quedas? ¿No elegir es una elección? No. Sí. Sí. ¡Tú proteges! ¡Yo ataco! Eso fue divertido. ¿La comida no siempre tiene que ser sangre? ¿Ah? Me encantan las alitas. Cada quien tiene su propio seco, solo que en mi caso se ve por fuera. ¡Boca Mi estómago es más ruidoso que mi boca. ¡Es hora!
Because literally, I think I keep on little level 6.
¿Una comida tamaño familiar para mí? ¡Sí! ¡Panchos nuevos!
What the fuck?
Pero claro, se nos hace agua la boca porque llora por comida. ¡No se muevan!
fucking Teen Vibe, man. What the fuck?
Sigo con hambre. ¡No pararé!
I need to fucking stick his jungle, man.
¿Eso pasó porque me pasé de control o porque me faltó?
Fuck!
¿Cuáles son los principios de la fuerza? Mira a tu enemigo a los ojos, dale el primer golpe y sé la última en quedar en pie.
Execute! What?
Ejecución.
¡Lo hice! ¡Fallé como todo el mundo! ¡Como el promedio!
Ha muerto un enemigo.
Si los animales sudados están salados, ¿significa que también hay dulces?
Voy en primer one.
Las orejas tienen una buena textura. ¡Wow! Morir en serio libera las fosas nasales.
Tu equipo ha derribado una torreta.
A Noxus no le importa que seas diferente, solo que seas fuerte.
Tu equipo ha derribado una torreta. Racha de asesinato.
Nunca se pierde el miedo. Es de mala educación mordisquear a tus amigos. Ahora que lo pienso, los guerreros son los que desatan los guerreros.
Objetivo identificado.
Hora de mostrar. Soy un arma, pero ahora solo yo me empuño.
What the fuck?
¿Eso pasó porque me pasé de control? ¿O porque me faltó? Ir hablando todo el tiempo. Nunca entiendo lo que dice, pero sé que nunca está feliz. Todos se mueren por matar y comer, pero les da mucha pena decirlo. ¿Cómo era? Y ahora
Asesinato doble. Exterminio.
No soy caprichosa para comer, ya sea un charco de sangre, una extremidad ensangrentada, sangre fría, sangre tibia. Yo pruebo de todo. Yo no pierdo el control. Me libero a mí misma del control. Cuando me sueño, puedo sentir, oír y ver todo. Puedo ser. Oye, Nacho, ¿estás lleno de sangre o no?
What the fuck?
Una vez oí a alguien decir que venían unos amigos para la cena. Y después dicen que yo soy la hambrienta.
Fucking piece of shit.
Ay, ya se me está yendo el color. Y apenas se me acabó la sangre. 険なリズムね。ユニゾンが響く。たまには真面目にうちのとっておきをくらえ。
まだ分かってないの。人間は星空を掌握する欲望を隠さない。私もよ。
ペースを合わせるぞ。ドリームカムトゥルー。いつショーコラボスタート。
ちゃんと直さないと。やっ逃がさないわ。
主将は口をつぐ。万物は殲滅から離れられる。スタンバイ。創造し。
今宵星々の反響。
戦闘は設計みたいなものよ。逃がさないわ。
テンポが乱れたか。It's show time。コラボスタート。
逃がさないわ。ちゃんと直さないと。やっ
うちの出番。ビュー。争いなんて消えればいいのに。逃がさない。殴ったね。
またそれか。
逃がさない。
まだ分かって。人間は星空を掌握する欲望を隠さない。私もよ。
ユニゾンが響く。たまには真面目にうちのとっておきをくらえ。殴ったね。
万物は殲滅から離れられる。
大丈夫。殴ったね。
ペースを合わせるぞ。いつショーコラボスタート。
戦闘は設計みたいなものよ。
ついてないね。ビュー。逃がさない。たまには真面目にうちのとっておきをくらえ。殴ったね。今宵星々の反響。
スタンバイ。
ちゃんと直さないと。
そっちに行って。いや。
真理を知る者は守られる。気雑音が。
たまには真面目うちのとっておきをくらえ。
アドリブでコラボスタート。
この歌声で勝利を。うちの出番。ビュー。
ペースを合わせるぞ。 ドリームカムトゥルー
逃が
What the fuck? Which one to put in?
姫子と一緒に戦える機会は少ない。今度は俺たちが実力を発揮する番だ。
たまにはマジうちのとっておきを食らえ。
チームワークを試すときアドリブで任せろ。退け。
ついてないね。戦闘は設計みたいなものよ。まだ分かってないのね。人間は星空を掌握する欲望を隠さない。私もよ。
コラボスタート。なぜ何も共鳴しない雑音が消えていく。
逃がさない。ちゃんと直さないと。やっ逃がさないわ。うちなかなかやるじゃん。ビュー。たまにはまずうちのとっておきを食らえ。逃がさないわ。
スタンバイ。
うちの出番。
またそれか。
殴ったね。
いつショーコラボスタート。共に歌
う。逃がさない。
退け。ペースを合わせるぞ。ドリームカムトゥルー。
戦闘は設計みたいなものよ。殴ったね。まだ分かってない。人間は星空を掌握する欲望を隠さない。私もよ。
またそれか。君らはこの力に生として君らに選ぶ余地はない。
たまにはマジうちのとっておきを食らえ。
始めよう。
逃がさない。
アドリブで
逃がさないわ。
いつショーコラボスタート。
継承よ。殴ったね。ついてないね。
任せろ。
いや。ちゃんと直さないと。
雑音消えていく。
たまには真面目にいるうちのとっておきを食らえ。
始めよう。退け。スタンバイ。ドリームカムトゥルー。
ビュー。 逃がさないわ。まだわかっ人間は星空を掌握する欲望を隠さない。私もよ。いや
死者に加護があらんこと。
I think maybe I should use it. I use this.
アドリブで一緒コラボスタート。
うちの出番。
万物は戦慄から変えられない。
君らは個性とし、君らに選ぶ余地はない。
逃がさないわ。
たまにはまずうちのとっておきを食らえ。
ちゃんと直さないと。
任せろ。退け。
ドリームカムトゥルー。
奮い立ちたまえ。
殴ったね。
始めよう。
ペースを合わせるぞ。
創造し
一緒コラボスタート。
真理を知る者は守られる。雑音消えている。
殴ったね。たまにはまじめうちのとっておきを食らえ。
万物は戦慄から弾き。
君らはこの生とし、君らに選ぶ余地はない。
ついてないね。
任せろ。退け。
スタンバイアドリブで
大事ない。
殴ったね。逃がさない。
テンポが乱れたか。
うちの出番。ビュー。
始めよう。
たまにはまじめうちのとっておきを食らえ。いやたまにはまずうちのとっておきを食らえ。
ペースを合わせるぞ。ドリームカムトゥルー。一緒コラボスタート。
ちなさい素晴らしいさようなら涙雨ひっクリティが湘南に過ぎないわ落ち着いて占いましょう立ちなさい想像し秩序なき雑音が涙雨クリティが触れるウィンドウを渡そう運命の最悪の力礼儀が真理を知る者は守られる全員砲丸を持ってみるべし落ち着いて想像し全てが消える想像し記憶が皆そこで深淵を迎え合う想像し福音を待つ湘南に過ぎない涙雨ひっ別れを告げるための時間はそう多くないというのにクリティあふれる全ての想像は終わる麦の日にいた哲学の大事万象を再構築するのです世の万物に放りあり人事なす最悪の力歴法に誓う呼吸するその感覚言語に誓う素晴らしいさようならパン現状を勝ちに誓う占いましょう立ちなさい規則に誓う意義に誓う涙雨別れを告げるための時間はそう多くないというのに 落ち着いて。
真実に誓う。
あなた、それとも運命の意識引導を渡そう。砲丸を持つそうよ一体。
勝ちに誓う。
立ちなさい。チェックメイト。記憶が音のない皆さん、終わりなき深淵を迎えます。
なんという冒涜。
素晴らしい時はお別れの時間よ。涙雨。降りてあふれる渡り川。ちゃんと受け取ってね。ちゃんと立ちなさい。